The night sky above Arcadia Research Base was fractured by blue lightning, silent, unnatural, and constant. It pulsed across the horizon like a heartbeat skipping in real time. Beneath its eerie rhythm, Dr. Yelena Rivas adjusted her visor and wiped the frost from the observation pane. The dome trembled faintly. Again, this time deeper. She turned from the glass, dread coiled tight in her chest. The others were still unaware. Across the lab's main corridor, 5 scientists hunched over consoles, tired, brilliant, overworked. Her team, each had poured years into understanding the anomaly buried below them, and now they had minutes left and didn't even know it. Her boots thudded against steel as she walked quickly down the corridor, her voice slicing through the white hum of generators. Shut it down. Everyone. Right now. They looked up, confused, blinking like animals caught in daylight. Yelena, said Dr. Hassan, his voice hesitant. We're close. The frequency's stabilizing. We've never seen. It doesn't matter. They're coming. Silence. Then a slow understanding. Yelena didn't exaggerate. Ever. Mira, the youngest, turned pale. The signal? Yelena nodded. It was never ours. We triggered something dormant. It's not just broadcasting, it's a beacon. Hassan stared at her, face drained of color. Do we have time? Yelena shook her head. Not enough. But someone needs to survive. Send the logs. Encrypt them. Scatter the fragments to the deep-net nodes. Now. The team snapped into motion. Every second a heartbeat stolen from inevitability. Outside, the wind changed tone. It wasn't natural anymore. It carried with it the whisper of arrival. Sharp, surgical, indifferent. Inside, Yelena keyed in her last command to the lab's failsafe. It wouldn't save them, but it might delay what was coming. One last barrier. One last scream into the void. Then came the rupture. No explosion. No sound. Just sudden absence. The lights died. Power vanished. Consoles dimmed into nothing. The anomaly at the center of their research flared once, brilliant white, and then went dark. Mira didn't have time to scream. Yelena only had time to see the shadow at the threshold, too tall, too thin, eyes glowing like embers behind liquid metal. And then there was only cold. 5 days later, the operator arrived. He was dropped via an unmarked pod into the snowstorm that had buried Arcadia's last transmission. No insignia. No command chain. No designation on record. Just a name scrawled into a dead file. Jacob. He stood motionless as the storm wailed around him, mist curling from the gauntlets of his armor. It hissed faintly, alive somehow, an ancient technot born of Earth, but bound him all the same. He descended into the ruins. Snowdrifts had swallowed most of the outer dome. Shards of synthetic glass peeked like broken teeth from beneath the ice. His boots crunched down with deliberate weight. Inside, the walls still bore scorch marks from energy weapons unknown to any faction currently cataloged by Earth Command. What little had been left behind was data scrubbed and decayed. Fragments of a massacre too precise to be human. Jacob moved silently through the corridors, scanning the dead. All 5 researchers. One terminal left barely functional. Enough for fragments. He recovered the files. The logs. The message. It played in broken static. Yelena's voice warping through packet loss and interference. If anyone hears this, stop the retrieval teams. The signal wasn't ours to study. It was theirs. They don't warn. They erase. They're not defensive. They're preemptive. A crackle. A long pause. Then a final whisper. They think we've evolved too far. Jacob clenched his fists. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a reckoning. Earth Command didn't know about the seed. Not really. They had theories, but none dared entertain what it really was. An echo of pre-extinction civilizations, a relic encoded with dormant potential, a genetic code not meant for one world, but for many. Arcadia had found one. They'd tried to study it, and now they were gone. Jacob looked to the center of the dome, the anomaly crater, half glowing beneath layers of fractured containment plating. It pulsed slowly, like something dreaming beneath ice. He approached, each step releasing vapor as the mist from his suit responded, matching the resonance. They were linked, and he didn't need orders anymore. The final command he received before Earth Command's silence had been simple. Recover the anomaly if safe. Destroy it if hostile. Eliminate any threats. They hadn't expected him to survive. They hadn't told him what Arcadia had really found. They hadn't told him the truth. But the seed did. The closer he got, the louder the whisper became. Not in his ears, but behind his thoughts. A pressure, a promise. Visions of other worlds long silenced. Civilizations erased before they could send. Each had touched the same pattern. Each had found the seed. Each had been struck down by the same unseen assassins. Only one survived. And now that survivor had passed it on. Jacob knelt beside the core. The mist from his gauntlets extended, wrapping around the seed. Light flickered, and for a moment, he wasn't in Arcadia anymore. He was on a world with twin suns, watching a sky blacken under an armada of sleek, silent crafts. Cities crumbled, skies burned. The last warrior of that world, a being of light and shadow, implanted the seed within her body and launched into the unknown, praying it would be found by someone who could resist, someone who would fight. Jacob opened his eyes. He was shaking, but not afraid. By nightfall, the remains of Arcadia had collapsed, whether it was the seed or the assassin's residual tech. The facility had given up its last breath. Jacob stood at the edge of a frozen cliff, watching the sky for movement. He didn't have to wait long. 3 silhouettes broke the clouds above, sleek crafts without flame or noise, descending like judgment. They had returned to erase the remainder, to eliminate the anomaly. But Jacob wasn't an anomaly. He was an answer, and for the first time in generations, Earth would not go quietly. He activated the beacon embedded in his suit, directing it toward the remnants of the deep net. Not a message for command, a warning for everyone else. They were coming, but so was he. The terrain shifted as he descended from the ridge, less jagged, but more treacherous. Ice coated the ground in sheets, fractured by the heat signatures of something immense having passed recently. Every step was calculated, silent, but he moved with unrelenting purpose. The communicator from the alien corpse now sat integrated into his HUD, scanning for repeat transmissions. It remained silent. That silence weighed heavier than the cold. The operator wasn't built for doubt, trained to act without emotion, without need for explanation, without allegiance beyond the mission. Yet as he followed the trail deeper into the valley, something inside him stirred. Not fear. He discarded that long ago, but a question. One that had no place in a mind like his. Why had the aliens feared the artifact? Why had they known him? He paused in a ravine, kneeling beside a scorch mark etched into the ice. The soil below had been glassed, superheated from a directed energy weapon far beyond Earth's current arsenal. The precision of the burn was chilling. Whoever had done this hadn't missed. They had made a statement. A footstep behind him. He spun, rifle raised, but saw nothing. The motion had been real. He knew the weight of footsteps, the change in airflow when a body displaced space. Something had followed him. He switched to thermal. Still nothing. And that was more alarming than anything else. His armor's sensors weren't failing. The enemy was simply cloaked, invisible to standard spectrums. Another step, closer this time. He didn't wait. A flashbang arced behind him, blinding white against the dim horizon. He lunged left, ducked low, fired blindly and spread. Impact. A shimmer in the air collapsed, revealing another of the aliens. Slimmer, taller, holding a blade longer than its own arm. It shrieked as his rounds punctured its abdomen, dropping to one knee. He closed the distance, blade to throat. But this one didn't fight. It raised a hand, not in surrender, but in something else. Recognition. Its voice, filtered to the same communicator he'd recovered earlier, emerged halting, as though every syllable pained it. You, not machine. You feel. He stared at it. The blade in his hand trembled slightly, not from hesitation but from restrained fury. You killed 32 civilians, he said, his voice low. The alien's expression twitched. We warned. You did not listen. Artifact wakes when touched. It speaks. You mean the seed? It nodded, the motion slow. It remembers war. It does not forgive. He processed that in silence. Why were you here? To stop it, before it speaks, before it infects. Infects? He narrowed his eyes. But before he could press further, the creature hissed violently, convulsing. A glow ignited along its veins. Then, with a final rattle, it collapsed, disintegrating into ash. Self-termination protocol. Whatever organization had sent it did not tolerate captured operatives, and it had revealed just enough to make him question everything. He continued deeper into the valley. The coordinates burned into his HUD were drawing him to a site several clicks south, a geothermal sinkhole barely mapped by the original research team. According to their last survey, it had been a dormant vent. Now it pulsed with activity. Heat signatures rising. Something had woken. He approached the ridge and looked down. The crater was massive, blackened with soot, ringed by scorched trees and warped terrain. At the center stood a structure, ancient and unfamiliar. No visible entrances. It jutted from the ground like a fawn, pulsing faintly with violet light. And guarding it, 3 more of the 6-limbed warriors, pacing in slow, deliberate patterns. He studied them. Pattern analysis confirmed they moved in sync, suggesting neural linkage. A hive mind architecture. Dangerous in combat. Deadly in ambush. He'd fought linked enemies before. Their weakness wasn't in their minds. It was in their loyalty. He scanned the structure. The pulsing light matched the frequency of the signal he'd intercepted from the communicator. It was calling out. To him, his pulse quickened, not with adrenaline, but something stranger, something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. But this wasn't Earth's purpose. Not anymore. He descended the slope with clinical efficiency, ducking between jagged rocks, deploying sound dampeners to mask his movement. The moment he crossed into the inner perimeter, one of the guards twitched. Head up, eyes glowing. He threw a chaff grenade, blinding the visual spectrum. Gunfire erupted. The fight was brutal, efficient, beautiful in its own terrible rhythm. His movements were a dance of calculated violence, every shot precise, every dodge practiced. One of the creatures lunged. He sidestepped, drove a blade up through its jaw. Another tried to flank. He triggered a seismic charge beneath its feet, sending it tumbling. The last tried to run. He didn't let it. When the silence returned, his armor was slick with acid burns, but intact. He approached the structure. No door. But as he neared, the pulsing quickened. Then light, a seam formed in the wall, splitting open like a wound. Inside, nothing but darkness. He entered. Instant silence, as if the world had disappeared. The light died behind him. No sensors worked. No sound. No movement. He was nowhere. Then a voice, not spoken, not heard, felt, "You are not one of them." He turned. Still darkness. "You are made of war, and yet you remember pain." He felt pressure inside his mind, images flashing, memories he hadn't chosen to recall. His first mission, the screams, the silence afterward. His own face, bloodied, young, human. He gritted his teeth. Were you a mirror, a memory, a warning? The darkness shifted. Shapes formed around him. Battlefields stretching across galaxies. Cities burning in skies filled with alien ships. Empires rising and collapsing. In every vision, one constant remained, a flicker of violet light, buried deep, always watching. You found us once, the voice whispered. You built from our ashes, and now you return. His breath slowed. You're the seed. A pause. We are what remains of the first mind, what they feared, not because we destroy, but because we remember. He should have felt awe, fear, even madness. Instead, he felt clarity, a cold certainty. These things killed to silence you. They do not fear death. They fear truth. Our knowledge cannot be controlled. The room lit slowly, revealing alien architecture unlike anything on Earth. The seed, a sphere of swirling violet mist, suspended midair, floated before him. We remember pain. It said again. So, do you... He approached it. I need to understand. You already do. His hand reached toward the seed, and as he touched it, light exploded, not outward, but inward. Visions flooded him. Wars fought before stars were born, civilizations devoured by fear, and finally, a choice. Always a choice. He fell to his knees, gasping. The seed dimmed. The voice returned, quieter now. We cannot stop what comes. But you can become more. He stood, shaky but resolute. What do I have to do? The seed began to break apart, pieces orbiting him, melting into his armor, his skin, his mind. Remember who you are. Remember what they buried. As the last fragment dissolved, the structure around him cracked open. Sunlight poured in. He stood at the threshold, changed, not just an operator. Now something else, and behind him, the seed's voice whispered its final command. Begin! The change was subtle at first, barely perceptible, but it rewired everything. The operator's vision had gained depth beyond the visible spectrum. He no longer simply saw heat signatures or structural outlines. He perceived intention, movement as it echoed through possible futures. Every breath of wind carried information. Every footstep left behind the echo of emotion. He was still himself, but more, enhanced not just physically but philosophically, tied now to a legacy of countless forgotten civilizations. Emerging from the seed's chamber, his armor shimmered with embedded fractals that pulsed with ambient energy. A layer of violet mist hovered inches from his skin, reactive, defensive, communicative. He didn't yet understand all it could do, but he felt it, alive, listening. A partnership had begun, forged in silence. He activated his comms, still unsure if Earth Command had reinstated contact. Static answered. Frequencies jammed, possibly by design. He wasn't surprised. He trekked across a ravine, moving with new precision. Time dilated as he walked, each movement guided by data he no longer needed to consciously process. The map to the alien enclave, previously patchy and incomplete, now unfolded in his mind with crystalline clarity. The seed had passed him something, knowledge or memory, or both. He followed it. The next encampment was less fortified but more active, an excavation site manned by dozens of alien workers, drones, and sentries. Their purpose was clear: dig beneath the surface to retrieve what remained of the seed siblings. There had been more. Others buried across this ice-locked planet, dormant echoes of ancient intelligence. They hadn't come to conquer. They'd come to erase. He perched above the site, watching the workers. None of them carried weapons. The guards stood alert, armed with phase lances and plasma bows. The drones buzzed with frequency shields, no easy way in. But brute force wasn't the path now. The seed had altered his directive. No longer mere extermination. Now revelation. He climbed down the northern slope, bypassing visual sensors. His mind aligned to the rhythm of the guards' movement, anticipating them, reading their intent. He reached the outer ring and knelt behind a supply crate. The mist surrounding his armor thickened, then projected an invisible veil. When a guard passed within meters, it didn't see him. That was new. He exhaled, rising to move, when something seized his mind. A spike of pain, foreign and violent. A presence. He fell back, clutching his temple. Vision slammed into him. The excavation complete, another seed shattered, a city burning under an alien sky. Screams. His own voice shouting a name he didn't recognize. It passed. He opened his eyes and saw her. Human. A woman bound to a neural rack at the heart of the camp. Her body limp but not broken. Her mind visibly resisting the siphon lines drilled into her skull. She was one of the original research team. The final survivor. And she had touched the seed. He moved without thought. The veil held as he infiltrated the inner ring. Every step echoed the pulse of his mission, now singular in focus. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a vessel. They were draining her to destroy what she had seen. One guard stood between him and her. He activated his neural disruptor. The device fired a silent spike of energy, stunning the creature mid-turn. It collapsed, convulsing. He caught it before it fell, lowered it gently, then moved to the rack. Her eyes flickered open. "Not again," she rasped. "It's over," he whispered, slicing the restraints. "I'm getting you out." She blinked, staring into his visor. "You're one of us." He paused. "No," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She didn't argue. Together, they slipped from the rack. She leaned heavily on him, her muscles barely functional. The neural drain had robbed her strength, but not of memory. That fire still burned in her eyes. "They'll follow," she whispered. "They're all linked now, if one sees." They didn't see. He activated the cloak again, and they melted into shadow. As they climbed the ridge, the camp below roared to life. Lights flared. Alarms screamed. A patrol had found the unconscious guard. He hoisted her over his shoulder and sprinted. Behind them, weapons fire lit the night. Once they reached the upper ridge, he ducked into a shallow cavern, carefully lowering her to the ground. The ambient mist cocooned them both, suppressing their heat signatures. "You touched the seed," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded weakly. "I didn't mean to." It sang. "I just wanted to understand." "What did it show you?" She looked at him, pain swimming beneath the surface of her expression. Everything. What we were. What they did. What we could be. He stared at her, words catching behind the silence of his thoughts. He hadn't felt companionship since before the Black File operations, before they'd stripped his name, his family, his right to feel. Yet something about her presence reconnected him to it all. The ache, the longing, the fragility of hope. "You've seen what's coming," he said. She nodded. "They'll destroy this planet if it means keeping the seeds buried. They fear humanity becoming more. We already are." He stood, scanning the terrain. Drones moved through the valley below. Heat pulses narrowed in on their location. "We need to move." She gripped his arm. "There's another seed. Further south, a convergence site. I saw it." He nodded. "Then we go together." "No," she whispered. "They'll track me. I'm marked now. I can feel it." He didn't argue. She was right. "I'll lead them off," she said. "Buy you time." You won't survive. She smiled. Neither will they. Before he could stop her, she injected herself with a stimulant, then rolled from a cave, sprinting downhill toward the camp. Alarms flared anew. He watched, his fists clenched. This wasn't supposed to matter. He wasn't supposed to feel. But he did. And when the explosion rocked the valley minutes later, her last act, a suicide charge planted in the excavation core, he felt something tear inside. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He turned toward the south and ran. Hours passed as he crossed the ridge line, mind burning with new understanding. This war was older than Earth's sun. The seeds weren't weapons. They were witnesses. Their presence had shaped thousands of civilizations, offering knowledge growth, and in some cases, annihilation. The convergence site loomed ahead, a crater ringed by crystal obelisks, humming with power. Inside, a vast dome hovered just above the ground, surrounded by shadows that moved unnaturally. They were already here, but so was he. He knelt, touching the earth, and whispered the name he hadn't used in years. Jacob, his name, his anchor. The mist surrounding him surged, recognizing the declaration. Identity stabilized purpose. The seed had taught him that. No longer a nameless weapon. No longer their tool. Just a man, broken but alive, ready to make his final stand. He rose and approached the dome. Behind him, dawn began to rise, its light catching the fractured ice and burning violet across the horizon. There would be no retreat, no cavalry, just him and the truth. The dome pulsed with quiet menace as Jacob stepped forward, each stride bringing him deeper into a field where time and sound distorted. Gravity grew uncertain, the pull of the convergence site fighting to unmoor him from the world he had known. He could feel the seed's resonance growing louder in his mind, not as a voice, but a memory of many voices speaking as one. They weren't calling for help. They were preparing him for war. The shadows moved with eerie synchronicity around the dome, cloaked in armor far more advanced than what he had faced before. These weren't scouts or guards. They were something worse. Executors, beings bred and bioengineered to erase knowledge, to sterilize evolution. Their bodies shimmer with refractive plating, each movement bending light and logic. They were built for one task, to destroy what threatened the hierarchy of silence. He crouched behind an outcropping of glass-like stone, surveying the terrain. His mind raced through simulations, paths of attack, outcomes. None guaranteed survival, all guaranteed impact. That would have to be enough. He adjusted his gauntlets, routing additional power from the seed's imprint embedded within his chest plate. A low hum rippled through his limbs as the mist responded, coiling tighter, pulsing with readiness. He would not outlast them, but he might outmatch them long enough to send the signal. He blinked once. Data cascaded across his HUD. It showed the relay beacon, buried under the dome, dormant. If activated, it would link to the orbiting debris net and transmit everything he'd seen, everything the seeds had passed on. Proof of genocide, blueprints of potential, the truth, unfiltered and unchained. He stood and ran. The moment he broke cover, the executors reacted as one, drawing weapons that sang in the wind, vibrating at frequencies meant to dismantle molecules. He dodged right, slid beneath a blast, then vaulted over a boulder. The mist shield bent the light around him, confusing tracking systems, buying seconds. Seconds were enough. He reached the dome and placed a palm against its surface. It was neither solid nor liquid, more thought than matter. The seed resonated through his fingers, recognized his presence, inviting him inside. The wall dissolved. He passed through. Inside, the world fell unborn. White light poured from unseen sources. Data streamed along the walls in living glyphs, ancient yet familiar. The beacon stood at the center, monolithic and silent. waiting. As he approached, he felt resistance, a wave of pressure not physical but emotional. Doubt, fear, the accumulated hesitation of every sentient who had failed to activate the beacon before him. So many had stood where he stood now, and chosen silence, chosen safety. He placed both hands on the beacon. "I'm not them," he whispered. "I'm not afraid." The beacon flared to life. Outside, the executors howled. They surged toward the dome, weapons raised, movements frantic. They knew. Inside, Jacob dropped to one knee, teeth clenched against the energy ripping through his body. The seed inside him expanded, stretching into memory not his own. Vision slammed through his consciousness. Wars won and lost, alliances forged in desperation, species rising and falling like waves against a cosmic shore. Then came Earth, not its past, its future. Children born with light in their eyes. Planets seeded with compassion, not conquest. He screamed, overwhelmed. The dome shuddered. Reality cracked. And then clarity. He saw the executors breach the dome's edge, weapons trained on him, but they hesitated. He stood, arms raised. "It's done." A signal burst from the beacon, a pulse of impossible color. It shot skyward, passing through layers of atmosphere, through satellites and derelict stations, through encrypted relays buried in dead moons. It reached Earth in under 3 seconds. The truth was out. The executors advanced. Jacob didn't resist. They stopped inches away. The tallest one raised a hand and lowered its weapon. "You are not our enemy anymore," it said in a voice like breaking ice. Jacob frowned. "Why?" The executor turned slightly. "Because truth redefines threat." And then they vanished. No transport, no retreat, just absence, as if they had never been. Jacob staggered, his vision blurred, muscles trembling from the aftermath. But he was alive, and the signal had gone out. He emerged from the dome into silence. The mist followed him, still loyal, but beginning to fade. A voice crackled in his comms. "Operator 019, identify. We have your location. Are you in distress?" He tapped the side of his helmet. Mission complete. No reinforcements necessary. There was a pause. "You're not authorized to make that call." "I wasn't authorized to survive," he said, and cut the transmission. He walked until the sky shifted to deep rose and the ice beneath his boots turned to soil. A small, hidden outpost appeared on the horizon, one of the original research team's safe havens. Inside, a terminal blinked. New messages waited. Thousands. He opened one. It was from a child, somewhere on Earth or Mars, maybe talking about what the beacon had shown. The child asked if the operator was real, if the story was true. He stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "Yes, and it's just beginning." He hit send. Later, standing outside the outpost, he watched 2 moons rise. He remembered her face, burned into his memory not by trauma, but by sacrifice. She had believed in something greater. Now the galaxy would too. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere, seeds were waking. Civilizations were stirring. He'd been sent as a ghost, an expendable asset. He had returned as a witness. And though he was alone, he no longer felt isolated. He was part of something bigger, brighter, unstoppable. If you believe in the truth, in courage, in the unbreakable human spirit, share this story. Let the message echo. Let others know we're more than what they say we are. We are more, and we are just getting started.